Hey all! Welcome back to my series on Centrism, which is my interpretation of Buddhism. If you missed the first episode, please consider watching that too. It helps inform this video. In this episode, we cover in more depth the concept of balance and the middle way, the foundational idea behind centrism and Buddhist thought. However, we'll also cover the fundamental question, why Buddhism? So, there are many competing religions and philosophies out there, each one claiming to be the truth. For many, it's hard to pick one because they all seem the same, and many of them are. Most religions have no proof that they're true, more correct than any other belief system, or right in any other way. Many people just adopt the religion they grew up with and leave it at that because to question it is uncomfortable and complicated. Unlike other religions, though, Buddhism is a little different. Sure, there are aspects which require some faith, such as the idea of rebirth or karma, but in general, Buddhism is focused on what is called the Dharma. The Dharma is the Buddha's teachings, yes, but more fundamentally, this word encapsulates all truth. The Dharma is defined as that which is true. You don't need to accept it on faith. It's testable. So, for example, the First Noble Truth states that life contains suffering. This is something that is provable and doesn't require faith to believe. The Dharma is about promoting happiness first and foremost, and one of the fundamental ideas is that in order to be happy, one must see the world as it is, not as they want it to be or fear it is. And therefore, understanding the truth is of paramount importance in Buddhist thought. This includes things like hard science, psychology, and other discoveries. In this way, the Dharma is not some ancient belief system that is preserved in books somewhere, but is a living and breathing system based on testable ideas. It's constantly growing, and in this way, Buddhism is different from other religions in that you don't have to accept most of it on faith. Instead, you can test it for yourself. This doesn't mean there aren't texts which contain the Buddha's teachings. There are scriptures, and the main one is called the Tipitaka, or the Three Baskets. This is a huge volume of text that contains sermons and speeches given by the Buddha, recorded many years after his death. And while the scriptures contain wisdom and good teachings, one thing you'll discover if you ever try to read them is that they are boring and badly written.
How? Leslie, I need you to be Buddha on Quaaludes, and Ben, you are Matthew McConaughey in a hammock on the beach.
The thing was that the Buddha's followers wanted to record all of his teachings down to the last word. This is great, but that means that there are tons of repeated sermons which can be skipped. In addition, the style of writing is very redundant, where the same ideas are repeated over and over and every possible example is given. These texts are hard to get through, and this is why people, myself included, have consolidated them into more manageable and comprehensive interpretations in books, or in this case, videos. Because the Dharma is just that which is true, one doesn't need to read the original Buddhist scriptures to get the same knowledge, although it can be helpful at times. There are other Buddhist scriptures, such as the Diamond Sutra and the Dhammapada, which are easier to read, but they are not page-turners.
It's like the movie Expendables 2. First time, hated it. Second time, hated it. Third time, it was okay. But then the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 10th time I watched it, I realized something. It's not good. It's not a good movie.
This is how Buddhism is different from other religions. Most of it is testable, and there is no compulsion in it. You aren't required to take it on faith. Your own experience will tell you if it's true or not. One of my favorite quotes from the Buddhist scriptures is from the Tipitaka, in fact. I have paraphrased it here, cutting out a lot of the repeated sentences and distilling it down to its essence. The Buddha told his potential converts and followers, "Don't go by reports, by legends, by traditions, by scripture, by logical conjecture, by inference, by analogies, by agreement through pondering views, by probability, or by the thought, this must be true. When you know for yourselves that these qualities, when adopted, lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. Conversely, when you know for yourselves that these qualities, when adopted, lead to happiness, then you should adopt them. This was his way of saying that Buddhism is testable and that you should do your own thinking. Now, I plan on covering rebuttals to other religions in this series in the future, but just know that this is the main answer to the question of why Buddhism? The answer is because it is testable, and you can know for yourself if it's true without the need to resort to blind faith, at least for most things. Going back to the idea of balance, the Buddha called his religion the middle way, as he cautioned his followers to avoid extremes when searching for happiness and fulfillment. Just like he taught his followers to learn from their own experience, the Buddha's teachings began with his personal experience. However, his teachings on balance went further than just advising his followers to avoid hedonism and asceticism. This philosophy was intertwined in everything he taught. A couple of examples are, he taught people not to outright reject other religions or belief systems and to inspect his system for themselves to see if it was true by their own experience, as we kind of covered above. But he also taught that some things required a bit of faith and couldn't be directly seen or experienced right away, such as the belief in nirvana, or the end of all suffering, or rebirth. Those are two good examples. Another thing that the Buddha taught people not to outright reject was negative thoughts, because to reject them is an extreme reaction that only causes them to grow stronger. This is why in the Eightfold Path we word things like "we strive to" instead of "we must" or "we should always." As the saying goes, never say never.
Baba Booey.
In Centrism, we believe that this idea of the middle way should guide all of our actions and beliefs. We try and adopt the Buddha's middle way as best we can, and everything else stems from this idea of balance and, well, centrism. Extremes are generally bad and lead to suffering. In my experience, most people don't need any convincing that this approach is sound, but for those who aren't quite sure how this would apply in everyday life, here are some examples. First, most illnesses can be seen in terms of an imbalance of forces. If you have a broken bone, for example, some form of pressure pressed on your bone to fracture it beyond its capability. Yet if the bone isn't under enough pressure at the right times, other health problems can occur. Also, maintaining health requires balance. For example, one must exercise in moderation to avoid a whole range of health issues, but too much exercise creates its own problems. Another area that balance is necessary in is government and society. History has shown that extremes in authoritarianism violate human rights and create massive amounts of suffering. Yet, on the other extreme, anarchy also devolves into an exploitative system where the strongest bullies seize power, and in a twist of irony, these bullies under anarchism end up creating the other extreme of authoritarianism. Now, trying to reduce every illness or every bad government down to a simple imbalance of extremes is an extreme in and of itself, because things are often more complex than that. For example, the common cold isn't caused by an imbalance of germs in your body, but is instead caused by an invasion of germs into your system. Certainly aspects of it could be reframed in terms of an imbalance, and in some ways that is what it is, but one must even practice the middle way when trying to balance things. This is because on rare occasions extremes are the best option. For example, carbon monoxide is toxic to humans, therefore there is no such thing as a moderately healthy amount of carbon monoxide for humans to breathe. In this case, having the extreme of no carbon monoxide is the proper path to take. Thus, one must practice moderation in their moderation, which ironically and almost paradoxically proves that all things must be balanced.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe not.
Okay, yes, it sounds like this is a major cop-out, but this is why Buddhists work to try and see the world as it is. This is part of right view, that first part of the Eightfold Path. We need to understand how things work to bring happiness to ourselves and others. Blanket statements are generally incorrect, and thus centrists believe that this idea of balance or moderation is the central guiding doctrine of their faith. Due to this, the symbol for centrism that I chose is the traditional yin and yang symbol of Taoism, with 8 spokes coming from within it, representing the Eightfold Path laid out by the Buddha. It is Buddhism with a strong emphasis on balance. So, this was just a quick video explaining the idea of balance a little more in depth and attempting to start to answer the question of why Buddhism over every other religion. Again, I plan on covering other religions more in depth later in the series, focusing on this question more, but this was an introduction. But for now, I want to thank you so much for watching, and remember, this is the worst channel on YouTube, so, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe for more, hit the notification bell for updates, leave a like and comment, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Thank you so much.